in a mode where I was stuck in my head without having any real outlet for conveying a structural integrity to something which didn't have its own substance to it, so it really helped me in my substance formation as well.
Huh. I think I might be in that currently.
Which substance did you form? Was it wood?
Huh?
I said, which substance did you form? Was it wood?
Wittgenstein just give up on philosophy.
I thought maybe you were one of the Wonder Twins. They can turn
He's
into
really
alternately an object or an animal.
Why is reading Wittgenstein giving up on philosophy?
He says philosophy's dead because it is a misuse of language. It is entirely based on people not understanding how they're using language correctly.
Mm-hmm.
He's right about certain kinds of philosophy. However, he's ignoring the fact that metaphysical narratives determine prescriptive action by groups that affect everybody.
Right. I think he was like being specific on that, but there was like specific types that had practical application that he wasn't really.
Right. Well, I think it's fair to say that we're limited in our ability to parse ontology, the nature of being, and we're limited in our ability to parse epistemology, the nature of knowing, because language limits us to statements that are objects representing processes.
So which philosophy be able to discredit?
I'm sorry, say again?
He discredited that. What was it, man? He discredited that discern any sort of that is anything other than descriptive of something that is in the world.
So he distanced himself from the metaphysical?
Well, he was saying that any philosophy that connects things in the world together is meaningless and without conveys nothing.
Okay.
That knowledge itself is more of a social context rather than a individual form. It needs to be connected to other references within the mind.
Well, I'm going to have to take exception with Wittgenstein's core position there, because I mean, to make that statement is to engage in the thing he says is meaningless, and just by conceding that in fact yours is meaningless too doesn't actually prove the position. Because to concede that it's meaningless is to prove its meaninglessness, and you get yourself a paradox. And he would say that paradox itself is indicative of the limits of language, right? Go ahead.
He mentioned that in the Tracto Logicus, whatever.
Okay. So
at the end of the book, he says that.
Oh, does he? I never read any of this shit, right? That's pretty clever of him. He realized that. Okay. Well, I mean, the thing is, yeah. To dismiss metaphysics as meaningless is to embrace a metaphysics of meaninglessness.
Actually, he switched to a metaphysics of, I guess it was more like speech acts. Instead of describing metaphysical relationships, he considered language to be a process in which people bounce ideas off each other.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Subject as well, so I don't think it has anything to do with language.
What doesn't?
bouncing ideas off each other. I think the subject can just do that internally and does that internally.
With language, though. Your internal
Not with
narrative.
language.
Well,
Your internal narrative is made of some kind of symbols.
I agree with that.
He does,
I think that
he does
these
differentiate between picture
elements-
language.
I don't think these basic
Megabro, go ahead. Let me hear what Megabro's talking about Wittgenstein's differentiation here real quick. Go ahead, Megabro.
Okay.
He differentiates between picture and speech language, and the picture language is uncommunicable.
Right. Okay. Well, like feelings, maybe. I mean, here's the thing. To me, language is the ability to deal with the world in ways that account for time frames without having physical objects be representations of those concerns. So language allows us to exist in time beyond that which is immediately in front of us, and it allows us to understand time in ways that are distinct from simply the changing of objects over time, such that we can think of ourselves as an agent that acts now, and we can think of ourselves as an agent that has acted before, and we can think of ourselves as an agent that will act in the future. We can make connections between those things and that those connections we make, the narratives that we build around the actions that we've taken, comprise our identity. And so as we build an identity as we go through life, we do so on this back and forth time frame thing where we reflect on what we've done before, we reflect on what we think right now is where we'd like to go, and we reflect on what we're going to do going forward, and we reflect on what we anticipate is going to happen, right? So we spend all this time building an identity that has to consider all those various factors. The only way to do that is to turn the processes of life into static objects that we can deal with. So it's to say that Judy was hostile in that meeting is to say a lot of different things, all kinds of shit, right? But it's basically to express how this individual's behavior relates to you in time according to along one of several narrative arcs, you know?
Did you see my diagram?
I did. I'm curious about it. You say that there's a threshold, right? That if it meets past the threshold, you're biased, correct?
Yeah, then it doesn't have to validate itself anymore and exist as a concept, individual itself.
Where?
So everything needs verification unless it suffers the loose ends of its dissipation. So all concepts dissipate over time, but
where
to
are
verify them or strengthen them, huh?
Where are they?
They exist as a network.
Where?
In the brain.
So there's a concept inside a human being, right?
Yeah.
All right. So it decays over time based on if you attend to it or not in your own brain. If it's something you think about a lot, it stays solid. And if it's something you don't really think about ever, it'll just dissipate, right?
Yes. And it has to be verified through the other connections that it has.
I think it's more accurate to say it has to be communicated to attain more reality.
I think it has to be individuated rather than social.
It has to be communicated. Listen, the ideas that you're communicating right now are going to have some impact upon a listener. You're saying no.
But that's not why you hold ideas.
You're advocating against universalism. You're advocating against principalism. You're doing basically a Foucaultian discourse critique right now. You're saying every issue of moral agency has to be individuated because we can't have any universal principles. They can ascribe a meaningfully predictive or prescriptive course for something as complicated as human ethics, how humans treat each other. I think that's your fundamental position. But it's wrong.
Yeah.
But it's wrong, is my
Why?
position. Because, first of all, it's indistinct from completely arbitrary. It requires you to assume that everybody shares a common value, the good, which is generally true. But it also requires you to assume they share a common value criterion, which is very, very not true.
But you're reducing real things like real interactions to language that is subjective or value-oriented. So since you have to have that value, one thing has to be prioritized over another.
Right. And to the extent that you are correct, you are prioritizing no limiting principle over a limiting principle. So my
Not
position
necessarily.
is,
I think that I can
yes,
still
necessarily.
obey these laws. No, I think I can still obey your principle. I don't think I have to.
What I'm saying is, here's the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do for me, for you, it's the single right thing to do. It's the right thing for everybody in all regards. There may be individuals.
Not buying it.
I know you're not. I know you're not. And that's why I'm saying you are prioritizing unconstrained, arbitrary execution of power over a limiting principle. If you do believe in a limiting principle, you're saying, I believe everybody has the duty to X. And then you're saying, if I ask you, well, which duties do you want to take on for yourself, that you agree that everybody, reciprocal burdens again, right? When we interact with one another in life, we may all have our own morality, but we have reciprocal burdens. So that's why we have to limit the ability for one person's subjective reality to impact another human being. Because otherwise, you violate the fundamental core engine that is of all fairness and justice in the universe, reciprocal burdens.
Yeah, but you're the thing that's self-sustaining it. It's not self-sustaining itself.
What isn't?
The principle.
Listen,
The principle doesn't act in...
You're right, Bo, it's a limiting principle. It doesn't act, it prohibits people from acting.
Yeah.
In certain specific ways. I'm saying we should adhere to that principle. It's a good thing. It would produce the best outcomes, and it's the only one that's logically consistent. I'm saying it's more true than what you're saying, because what you're saying is inconsistent with itself, and it's completely arbitrary.
It's a decent thing, yeah, sure, but good is a very loose word for that.
It ought not be. It should be really clear cut. What you're advocating for is wrong and bad because you're advocating for rights violations based on arbitrary justifications of this group or that, making decisions based on individual contexts. Whereas what I'm advocating for is a limiting principle that constrains people and confers just one duty upon them. Now, if you want to advocate that we should have more than one duty, then tell me what it is. But remember, it should be reciprocal. Everyone's going to have to accept this too. What can we all accept as a reasonable duty?
What if I hold as a duty that every individual, all duties are invalid unless they have a reason for validating their duty?
Okay, when you say a duty is invalid, what I'm saying is society ought to make its laws according to this framework, such that your moral duty and your legal duty are the same thing. Such that I know if I am going to complain to the government that you made me feel bad because you said you didn't like my hat, that the government's going to say, that's not a rights violation. You have no claim upon our monopoly of use of force for this instance.
It's nice to be convenient.
Well, it's more than just convenient. It's more correct. The alternative is to advocate for arbitrary justifications of violence. If not, then give me something I can take away as a reciprocal burden.
I mean, just the language you're using, it has to be value-oriented rather than nature-oriented.
My point is, it doesn't matter how wrong I am, right? If I win and I'm wrong, if I win and I'm quote-unquote wrong, nobody gets fucked. If you win and you're quote-unquote wrong, then random people get fucked for various reasons that are completely arbitrary. That's the difference.
agree in so much as I don't provide an alternative framework as much as a criticism.
You do. You provide an alternative framework. You say something other than protecting rights, which means you say, yeah, let's violate some rights sometimes.
That's not a principle, though. That's a negation of a principle.
No, my principle is a limiting principle. Remember, it doesn't mandate action; it prohibits action.
Yeah, but I'm not replacing that principle. with
Yeah,
anything.
but I don't want to lose, is what you're just saying to me. The fact is, you got nothing to stand on. Got nothing. Not a goddamn shred of paper to
Okay.
stand on anymore because you're not advocating anything consistent. That's the problem everybody has when they run into the buzzsaw that is the negative rights argument. I'm the only one not advocating arbitrarily justified violence. And thank you for watching Talking with Famous People. I've been host Eric, and this video comes to a close as we encounter technical difficulties. If you like technical difficulties, then you'll love this episode of Talking with Famous People.
Arguing about tags. Specifically, what moral means. You could avoid using the word moral and just say it's rights protecting or something.
Well, I think that's taking the chicken way out. My position is that it is wicked and wrong of you to disagree with me. I like to make bold claims like that, right? Because I can defend the position. So why not make the boldest claim? There's no reason there's a huge problem is everyone's like, well, we have differing opinions. Don't get in a big argument with Americans. It's just opinions. No, they're wicked and wrong for disagreeing with me because they're advocating for unjustified violence and I'm not. That's my position.
You're not trying to find the truth. You're not trying to find the truth.
You're the one who's denying things like truth and moral certainty. I'm saying you're wicked and wrong for advocating unjustified violence. How's that not trying to find the truth?
See, this is where we fundamentally disagree on what morality is used for. I think morality is used as a system for weighing perspectives on a like interest, like determining function, so that we can determine what is the most optimal use of our freedom. While you think that morality is something that we should be adhering to.
No, I think morality, as I use it anyway, is something that provides us as individuals the ability to look at our own behavior and say, was my behavior here just? I know this person has their feelings hurt, but was I right to do what I did anyway? Let me look at the circumstance.
The very words you're using implies a reduction.
Okay, so you're saying I'm begging the question. I'm assuming a morality that exists. Well, okay, I agree with you here, and I'm going to concede the fact that that is an assumption that I have to get people to agree with, which is that at least on some occasion, that it would be possible to wrong you. So if I killed your whole family, would that wrong you?
In my perspective, yes.
Okay.
I would be on the lack.
So if it's possible for me to wrong you, then we conclude that morality is a description of injustice and the normative truths governing our behavior on a metaphysical level, not on a legal level, okay? On a metaphysical level. So if you don't ascribe to that, that's fine. For individuals who do not reach the highest stage of moral development in Maslow's hierarchy of moral development, for those individuals, that's why we need coercion, right? We need it as a mechanism to respond to individuals who don't adhere to their own top-level moral code. I don't think you're actually going to behave badly. I think that you are just in the metaphysical realm embracing relativism. In the actual life realm, you probably don't go around hurting people, right? And you probably don't actually advocate that, oh, we should go beat up that little girl. That'll be fun. So it's just right now you are embracing relativism as more defensible. The only reason you're embracing it is because you think it's more defensible. I'm here to tell you it's a lot less defensible as you're currently experiencing. I'm winning this argument not because I'm a better debater, but because I'm right.
I think it's because of the effects of it, though. Because I think relativism doesn't really provide anything besides of a.
Well, yeah, it has no utilitarian value. That's true. I gotta get a drink of something. You guys, you agree with Eric, but you think morality is made up. Well, it's not. It's a word that we use to describe the fact that there's cool and not cool, right? It's possible to be not cool to somebody. I gotta get a beverage. I'll be right back.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna get some tacos. I'll be right back.
I'll wait for everyone to get back then.
I guess it's just me and waiting for name.
Mm-hmm. That might have been me waiting for name, because I was here for a while. Oh wait, there's more than one waiting for name. Ah.
What do you think of... Part of this argument is that morality does or doesn't exist. Well, that's just another way of saying rights and wrongs do or do not exist.
Yeah.
If someone can agree that rights and wrongs exist, that's the same thing as agreeing that morality exists.
Yeah. Because I think I can understand the viewpoint of people saying morality doesn't exist, and it's all to do with perspectives and social things and all that, but you'll find that there are a lot of global moralities shared by the entire race, no matter what culture you are from. I doubt there are many people in the world, even if they're all separated by culture, would go about murdering their own babies after they were born for no reason at all.
There are some things
that would be considered wrong, and that's a form of morality in that case, which means morality does exist.
Well, yeah, but if you look up morality in the dictionary, it doesn't necessarily have to be universal. It just has to be customary.
But morality is basically if something is right or wrong at the end of the day, right? And
right,
saying if it, yeah. So that definitely exists.
Yeah.
Even if morality is subjective to each culture, it still exists.
Right.
And the very fact that I think there is like a global morality anyway, because as the point I just made, I don't know if Eric heard it.
I didn't. I'm sorry. Just put the headphones back.
I was saying that I'm pretty sure that most cultures around the world in the entire human race, even if they were each other, would not like it if you murdered their babies for no reason. They would say, no, that's wrong. There's no reason for doing it, which means that was bad, and that morality does exist as a global thing.
Well, suffering exists. That's the number one thing, is that it is possible to suffer. And it's possible for Bo to suffer, and it's bad if Bo does suffer. And his relativism is just an abstraction regarding that. And that's what happens. We abstract away from the facts too much. We abstract away from what we can sustain because we don't like its limitations in some way. Eccentric M, is that you just talking?
Yeah, it is.
I didn't even show you in the list here.
Yeah, well, I'm not long joined, but it's strange.
Well, I recognize your voice. I was looking around like,
yeah.
Who is that talking? It's got to be him, isn't it? It's got to be him.
Yeah.
All right. So other people's
I thought that
thoughts?
was Tandy at first.
You thought it was who?
I thought it was Tandy.
Is he another British guy?
Yeah, I think he's from Australia, actually.
I thought it was Prince
Similar
Charles.
accents.
I was pretty sure it was Prince Charles, but then I listened. I was like, no, that's Eccentric M, I think. Every time you're not here, Eccentric M, Prince Charles comes. You just miss it. I don't record those episodes, though. I don't publish them. They're, secret. It's between me and the Prince. We talk about aristocracy. So, how are your peasants? Fine. How are your peasants? Fine. I don't have any peasants. That's the problem, right? If we're going to have that aristocracy system people keep advocating, I want peasants. If we have to have it, I'd rather be an aristocrat than a peasant.
And the negative rights framework, is it a democracy?
Doesn't matter. At that point, it's irrelevant, right? The manner in which the public manages to make happen.
As long as it's implemented?
Right. Somehow the public needs to implement the duties of government. One way or another. And to me, that includes roads, maybe some military, and police protection, and like fire protection maybe, and just basic infrastructure stuff. And in my mind, the public has to somehow figure out a way to fund those few things and put protocols in place that just execute that system and then forget about it for the rest of the time. It doesn't need to have legislative powers.
So, like, if someone was getting stabbed and I didn't help them, that would be against the negative rights framework?
No, that'd be fine. I mean, it wouldn't be
It would?
fine. You'd be a douchebag, but you wouldn't be criminally liable for anything.
Oh. Cool.
What is this thing? Any other thoughts on this stuff?
No, but I am still wondering about, like, what books or what kind of, or who has influenced you.
Oh, right. I never answered your question, huh?
No.
Well, I would say I've been influenced mostly by debate, the process of debate, researching stuff, building cases, and trying to come up with tricky, clever arguments, and winning debates in lots of different frameworks. You know, I mean, it's not like my kids always run negative rights. Sometimes we run stuff like we must tax the shit out of everybody and spend all this money on blah, 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 blah. We run that stuff. But, I mean, that's the thing. And when we run it hard. We run it as hard as we can. But I know that, I have a totally different strategy. When I'm running that shit, it's to make it as difficult as possible for them to get down to the bottom of the bullshit, right? You gotta wind up the bullshit in curls, basically, so that, and intertwine it with another piece of bullshit, so that you have pivot points so you can shift ground from bullshit to bullshit, and they never get to the bottom of it. Your impact's still standing at the end of the round, and you got the round. It's fine to run debate rounds like that. And then if you're running a negative rights framework, you have to build it the other way around. You go, okay, well, we have to make it clear how they can win. They can prove this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. Or they can show that this and this are consistent on their case, or they can show this and this are consistent. They can prove this. You establish the burdens. You say, here are the burdens I will meet, and therefore you should meet them too. And they're not unreasonable. They're not like, well, I defined every word in the first sentence of every card, so you should have to do that too. It's simple things like, one of the burdens I will take upon myself is for my case to be consistent with its framework. That I won't have anything that's inconsistent with the framework. So if I'm arguing a util framework, saying, well, we should take a guess about what the most impacts are going to be and decide the issue on that, well, then I'm going to have a case that's entirely based on predicted impacts. And if I say we should determine who violates the most rights, I have a case based on that, or whatever. The point is, I'm saying, now, this burden applies for both of us. You need to have your points be consistent with your own framework too. And once everyone agrees with that, okay, yeah, I have to be consistent. I have to be consistent too. If I expect you to be consistent, I have to be consistent too. Fine. Well, then they've already lost the round. Why? Because then they have to defend their utilitarian framework, and it doesn't withstand any muster. It doesn't withstand any attacks at all, because unavoidably, every single thing that has been justified with utilitarian concerns inevitably produces more harms than the promised outcomes. What do you think Iraq is? The U.S. invasion of Iraq. It's utilitarianism.
What is a utilitarian framework?
It just says it's okay. We make our decisions about what's moral or immoral based on net outcomes. So it's a pure utilitarianism would say, if it's been a car crash, there's 5 people on the table or 4 people on the table and the operating table. Each of them needs a new organ. One needs a heart, one needs a spleen, one needs a liver, one needs a kidney, or they're all going to die. And you walk, you've got a little cold. A purely utilitarian framework would justify the doctor killing you, taking your organs, and saving 5 people, saying, well, 1 for 5, it's fine. But that's the utilitarian argument. The deontological framework, people argue against that by saying, well, if you have a terrorist who's got a nuclear bomb planted somewhere in your city, you need to be able to torture him to get the information out. You're going to save millions of lives. The problem is, it's always what ifs.
I might have called that utilitarian perspective a short-sighted utilitarian perspective. Because if you think about it long term, it messes up the society.
Right. And this is the core issue, is that everybody thinks their pet issue is a good enough justification to make an exception on the rights framework. That, well, in this particular issue, we should make an exception. But it breaks the system. Because either you are making decisions on who gets to violate whose rights based on a limiting principle, or it ends up being both arbitrary and it tends to be wielded by the people we least want it to be wielded by. In other words, we're affording to another the superiority of decision making that we ought not to. And if we were going to afford it to somebody, it's not the person who wants to be able to wield unjustified coercive power. If somebody wants to be able to wield unjustified coercive power, you do not want that person to have it. And that's what we do all the time. We elect somebody who says, I'm going to give everybody free college. He says, I want to wield unjustified coercive power like this. And everyone goes, yay, he's going to wield it like that instead of like this. And then somebody else gets, I'm going to wield unjustified coercive power like that. They go, yay, he's going to do it like that, like this. And then people have big arguments back and forth about this and that, right? My position is, as long as we allow ourselves to continue arguing about which utilitarian predictions are better than the other ones, we continue to perpetuate a system that just violates rights, it justifies violations of rights, and it assumes that it can account for every variable, and it inevitably produces unintended consequences, and it's completely arbitrary. There's no reason to assume that your pet idea is going to be the one that's going to be justified next.
So besides... Oh, shit. Besides the utilitarian and the negative rights framework, what are some others, are there?
Well, I mean, bad ones. There's like the Foucaultian discourse framework that Bo was arguing earlier, which basically says we have to adjudicate issues of moral agency by each in its own unique set of circumstances. We can't. Principalism imposes a stricture upon individuals that denies that somehow it undermines their moral agency because it compels them to think that, well, we have to determine whether they did the right thing or the wrong thing based on this rule rather than on actual human experience. But my position is that's why you have to have this specific principle, because it's the only one that doesn't fall victim to the complaints of the Foucaultian discourse critique.
Can you tell me more about the negative rights framework and how it would play out in a country?
But most people don't have a framework. You know, that's the other thing to note, is most people don't make decisions about their beliefs and their politics on any framework. They go on who they trust more based on how that individual matches up with their personality type. That's my current theory, that people make most of their political decisions on type. That's why I voted for Obama the first time. He's in the NTP. I didn't know it back then. I didn't know enough about this stuff back then to even think about it at all when I was voting. Anyone want to chime in on the link between politics and type?
I've read about it and I heard it's pretty apparent.
Right.
A lot of J's.
Well, if it is, and we think about that, if it is by type, and we know that there's going to be competing interests on the other side, a lot of people would conclude, well, that's why we need compromise. But I would point out, no, that's why we need what I'm advocating for, because it guarantees a single limiting principle, reciprocal burden that both parties have when they're in disagreement. We need to think about governance as not a battle between our side and the other side, but rather our unpleasant and irksome duty as referees when those two sides of people who aren't any of us disagree with each other. Those two special interest groups disagree. Which one of them are going to get their way? Well, that's what the limiting principle gets to determine. No arbitrary reasons for that. You can get your way if it's consistent with this. You don't get your way if it's not, and that's it. And it applies the same for everybody. That's how we should manage politics.
And if it's kind of like correlated with type, I mean, the personality types, what is it? They're not spread out evenly.
Right. So, I mean, NTPs have a tough time. We face a lot of arbitrary rules that we don't like. We're naturally disinclined to arbitrary rules. And you would say, well, so you're just showing your personal bias, Eric. Well, again, that's why my particular advocacy is different from any other, is that it advocates protection on a single principle that applies to everybody, that protects everybody from the wrongness of types that are adversarial to their own.
Yeah, I like that.
And we see it play out on a more concrete level, simply as, oh, well, you don't like gambling, so because your husband has a gambling problem, so you fight vehemently against any increase in gambling in California. But you have no problem simultaneously voting for more marijuana legalization and legalization of drugs, so you like drugs a lot. Well, okay, do you get it? Do you see what the problem here is?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the fucking problem. Everybody thinks, well, my thing matters, but your thing doesn't matter. And if we don't have a single principle that allows us to adjudicate the thing definitively in every circumstance, it's either something we have to adjudicate, which means it includes probably some rights violations, in which case it's going to be adjudicated against the proposed rights violations basically always. Or it doesn't include rights violations, in which case there's nothing to say about it.
So we need universal morals.
I'm giving it to you right now. I'm telling you what it is.
Mm-hmm.
At least one that competes really well and can be made into a good policy.
Right.
And what's actually going on is everyone's got unique ones, but they're competing, and one of them goes into policy.
It's Kant's moral imperative. Don't treat other people as a means to an end. It's a perfect way to think about it. It's fine to arrest that drug dealer and put him in jail for 10 years. Why? Well, it's going to help us achieve our goal of a drug-free America. No, it's going to help you violate the deontological imperative. You're not treating him as a means to an end. I mean, you're not treating him as an end to himself. You're treating him as a means to an end. But here's the thing. You don't know if your action is going to actually achieve that end. As we learned in the drug war, it didn't, right? Spent all this money and time and energy, but that didn't work. Other thoughts? Okay. Go ahead.
War on drugs is retarded.
Yeah. War on drugs is, I mean, it's, well, what it is, it's util winning the argument for some reason.
Because there wasn't a real argument though.
Right. Well, it used to be generally accepted to be the case that if somebody would say, "Oh, he's trying to justify the ends with the mean," he's trying to justify his means with his ends, that was sort of the final say in the matter. That's you're arguing bad because you can't make that argument. You can't justify your evil means by pointing to your predicted ends. Somewhere along the line that changed. You don't hear that anymore. You don't hear that like he's trying to justify his means with his ends as a critique. But of course, it ought to be. It's the fundamental critique. It's the fundamental reason why any bad act can ever be taken. It always requires a justification like that. Well, I can do it. I can do this bad thing because.
Why did that stop happening? No,
I don't know. It happened when I was a kid. I remember hearing it on the news and shit. Or like on an opinion piece on the news. You know, at least something like that kind of stuff. I don't know when it changed. Probably around 2001 when people decided to let's pretend authoritarianism has a good case. Or
Everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
Oh, right. That's when it happened.
well, but I mean, in the end, it ends up being a good thing because I think it becomes ever more unavoidably true that this, that, and the other things that enable authoritarianism are bad and wrong. So now suddenly we want body cameras on cops. Everybody kind of agrees on that. It used to be that you couldn't make any headway in something like that at all. The cops are the good guys. Whoever they're shooting, I'm sure they deserve it. Whatever. Unless you are an effective member of a community that is targeted more frequently, you're going to have that position probably. As a default, you're indoctrinated with it right from the get-go. Okay, let's stop this and let's talk in the next video about hurt feelings. And I'll start with my example of when my feelings were hurt until I went to sleep and woke up the next morning and realized I was being ridiculous. And then my concern right now that... Well, anyway, let's stop this. Thanks for watching Documents People.